right, everyone.
That's awesome.
All right, let's go ahead and take our seats. We'll get started today.
So, I'm gonna send a comfy chair. Are the comfy chairs reserved for anyone in particular?
No.
For you.
For you.
There we go.
Larry, are you good? All right. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to 1MC Westminster here at Startup Portal. Thank you, Rick, for letting us use the space. If anyone is interested in coffee or baked goods, there is some in the back there provided by American Ice Cafe and Jeannie Bird's Baking Company. We'll go ahead and get started here with Linda and Successfully Speaking in a minute. But before we do, I'm just going to go over our core principles here at 1 Million Cups. So the mission of 1MC is to lower the barrier for access to education, resources, and connections for entrepreneurs. Without our core pillars, and of course everyone here and on Facebook Live, we cannot accomplish this mission. So we're looking for presentations, not pitches. We're really about connection, not networking. We're for the community, by the community. We really want to get to know you, your business, your organization, and the challenges that you're facing so that we can connect you to all the great people and resources we have in our community. Nobody here has ownership of 1MC Westminster, though. Nobody is paid to do 1MC Westminster. And we are radically and intentionally inclusive. We really look for broad diversity of businesses and people to come and join our community and make a contribution or just do a presentation. We meet every week, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. We're also on YouTube if you want to catch us after Wednesday. We have 2 presenters whenever possible. Presenters, organizations, we ask that you be less than 5 years old and willing to ask for help because we always end with the question, what can we as a community do to help you? And here's our organizing team: Graham Dodge of Magic, Chris Abel of the Carroll Technology Council, Vicki Slinkman of Ting, John Wheatman, attorney at law, Tina Thomas of the Infinite Love Project, myself, Julia Snap, Dirigible Systems, and Gabby Rose, also of Magic. And with that, I will hand it over to Linda.
If people join on Facebook can ask questions and comments, and we'll read them out loud.
Good morning.
Good morning,
everybody. Those of you who met me last time know that I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to be asking you some questions. So let me ask you the first question. How long do you think it takes to make a first impression? When you walk into this meeting and you haven't met somebody before, how long do you think that's going to take?
5 seconds.
3 seconds? 5 seconds?
2 seconds.
2 seconds?
Before you meet.
Before you meet, yeah. Sometimes before you meet, right. But when you walk in that room and you see somebody, it's unbelievable. But a study done at Princeton said that it takes 1/10 of a second to look at somebody's face and make decisions about them. How unfair is that? But that's the reality. Because in that 1/10 of a second, look at all the different things that people are deciding. Well, it's obvious how attractive. That's not fair, but people make that judgment. How likable you are. Are you trustworthy? Are you confident? And how aggressive are you? Isn't that amazing? And when they tested that, maybe an hour later, those same impressions remain. So our brain is making a quick judgment when we meet somebody. How intimidating is that? I'm Linda Katzwiller, as you know, and my company is Successfully Speaking. And let me give you a little bit of background what Successfully Speaking is. It's not a 5-year-old company, but I'd say in the past 5 years, I've pivoted and changed what I'm doing with it. I started out as a speech and language pathologist, moved to Maryland, and Larry helped me create the name Successfully Speaking. But I worked with communication disorders, children who had speech and language problems, who needed speech therapy, adults who had head injuries and they had brain trauma, and they needed help with that, people who've had strokes, spinal cord injuries, head and neck cancer, all of the medical parts. I'm working with people with communication. And then I moved to Maryland, and I continued to do that. But I started working with a lot of people who had voice problems. That was one of my specialties. And I learned that with these voice problems, sometimes it was just an accent. So I was working with somebody in Philadelphia, and she hated the way she sounded. And when I realized that, it was not anything wrong with her voice, it was her Philadelphia accent. And I'm a transplanted New Yorker. And so it made me very aware that people judge you by the way you sound. Just by opening up your mouth and saying something, they'll ask me to talk about coffee and chocolate. And I'm from Long Island. And I hated that because they weren't listening to me. They were just focusing on how I sounded. So I became fascinated with that and then started working with other people who had foreign accents. If I was having an issue with a Long Island accent, what about the IT professional from India who has an accent even though they speak English and people aren't understanding them? That brought me to where I am today with helping people speak, sound, and look like leaders. And it shifted from clinical work to corporate work. But my passion for working with patients and helping them be as good as they could be is what transferred over to working with professionals and helping them if they have nervousness about public speaking, if they have voice issues, if they have an accent, if they get nervous during a pitch and they speak so quickly you can't even understand what they're saying. So I've done all of that, and so my business has changed to working with people who are in the startup world and coaching people. I've worked with TEDco. I'm an advisor there. I've also worked with Beta City when they had the competitions and I would coach. And I've done some work at University of Baltimore with Henry Mortimer. Now, if you don't know who Henry Mortimer is, we're going to talk about that at the end, but we coached together. And it was amazing when two people are coaching from different backgrounds, how much that helps the entrepreneur. So when I look at communication, there are 3 V's I look at, and I'm going to just pass this around. You can just pass these. There are 3 V's. There's the visual, how you look, and that's what that study said. The minute I look at you, I size you up, whether that's fortunate or not, or even if you look at a picture. So there's some credence with your branding and how you set yourself up on social media. People are judging you. So the visual is how you look, and I'll get into more details, and you have that on the handout. The vocal is how you sound. Do you talk with a real nasal voice? Do you have uptalk? And when you're very nervous and your voice goes up all the time, it sounds like you're really not sure of what you're talking about. Many people do that. Do you speak too high-pitched, or do you try to lower your voice and speak like this? And I met somebody recently who does training, and when I spoke to her on the phone, I had trouble listening to her for the whole time because she basically spoke like this the whole time. It was really hard to listen and have no energy when she was speaking. She wasn't coming to me for a consultation, so I didn't say anything. I don't offer advice if nobody's asking me, but those are going to be problems in your professional image. And then there's the verbal, which is what we always think about. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? How do I start my pitch? How do I end my pitch? Then you start to think about not just the organization, but the grammar. Do I have very good grammar? If I don't, what am I going to do? Do I use idioms all the time? And if there's an audience, they don't understand what I'm talking about. If I say something about go the whole mile or whatever, or go out on a limb, any type of idiom is a problem. So that's giving you a lot of things to think about. Your visual, your vocal, and your verbal. So let's just take a look at this. And the visual, again, is how you look. So I don't just mean what did you wear today, but it's how do you carry yourself. Do you have good posture? Or do you show up like you're exhausted? Or do you hold yourself in such a way that everybody thinks that, wait, does she think she's better than everybody else? Or if I stand like this, what are people thinking? You know, if I stand like this, unless I'm in the military, you don't really give a presentation this way. And what do you do with your hands? Do you keep your hands in your pocket the whole time? So while you're presenting, you don't gesture. And so you lose a lot of animation. Or do you use your hands too much and it's driving everybody crazy? And one little tip for that, when people say they move their hands too much, just keep your fingers together. And if you're still moving your hands a lot, it's not nearly as distracting as if my fingers are all over the place. So gestures are important. The other thing, which I don't have to tell anybody, is eye contact is important. But for different cultures, not every culture makes eye contact because it's a sign of respect if you look away. And we have to learn to understand that with such a multicultural workforce. The final thing is facial expression. Some people say, should I smile all the time? No, not if you're delivering bad news. So your facial expression needs to be consistent with the message that you have. It's a lot to think about. I think on that handout I even mentioned the head tilt. And that's an interesting one because I used to say you're more powerful if your head is straight up. And I still believe that. And actually my son is an entrepreneur and we were talking about that and he said, I don't agree with you. You tilt your head when you're asking for money because you show that you're listening and you don't want a position of power. Oh, that's really interesting. But he's a millennial, what does he know? I'm not going to listen to this. So then I go speak at a law firm and some of the senior lawyers were in the room and I said something, what do you think of this head posture? And one lawyer shouted out, that's the posture I use when I listen to my clients. And I thought, isn't that interesting? So just the way you hold your head is going to help people read you better. Just a thought. So that's the visual. Let's talk about the vocal, and that's my sweet spot because I'm a speech and language pathologist and I deal with voice all the time. I'm not going to go through everything today. This is just a short presentation, but let's just talk a little bit about how vocal comes into play if you're giving a pitch or if you're speaking to a company or a client. If you're giving a talk, warm up your voice. You'd never go for a run without stretching. So warming up your voice could be anything from humming or doing scales or just going, ah, like that. Just get your voice started before you start speaking to somebody. Because if it's a 7 o'clock meeting in the morning, your voice, you may have that morning voice. And if it's an 8 o'clock talk in the evening and you've been talking all day, you may have this really tired voice. So warm it up. You can make your voice sound better. Another thing to do is, and this is so important, if you're going to give a pitch or get up in front of a room, and when I was introduced, if I came up and I just started talking as soon as I got here, you're going to sense a lot of nervousness in me. But if I stand there and settle down for a moment, and even take a breath before I get started, you're going to see much more composure. So make sure you're settled down and don't start talking right away. And by the same token, don't run off after your last sentence. I teach master classes in public speaking, and when I did it in person, I would see that all the time. They didn't want to get up there. So they got up there and they talked about what they had to say, and then they got off, and it's like, what just happened? The audience all knows you're nervous. And in a master class, it doesn't matter. But in the real world, when we're trying to be polished and professional, that will matter. The rate of speech is obvious. You don't want to talk so fast that they don't know what you're talking about. But again, you're going to be nervous sometimes, or excited, I don't like to use the word nervous, for a speech, and you speed up. That's just natural. Here's what you need to do to slow down. You wouldn't want to listen to me if I spoke this slow. But if I paused in between phrases, you can give a lot of information and take a pause in between. And then your audience is following what you're saying, and you're not feeding them with this fire hose of words. There's another reason for that pause. When we're listing things, if I'm going to do 3 things, listen to what my voice does. I'm going to the store, I'm going to buy some milk, and then I'll come home. What happened when I was listing? Could you hear how my voice went up? So if I said to you, hi, my name is Linda Katz-Wilner, and my company is Successfully Speaking, and I work in the Baltimore area. Did you hear how my voice kept coming up? It started sounding less powerful. If you think of making statements, hi, my name is Linda Katz-Wilner. My company is Successfully Speaking. I'm located in Maryland. Those sound more solid. Now, if we're listing, we can go up, but we want to come down at the end. I've heard people in networking meetings, hi, my name is Linda Katz-Wilner, and my company is Successfully Speaking, and I've been working here in the Baltimore area for 20 years. And like they never ended. So think of periods at the ends of sentences. That's why they're there. And bring your voice down. You'll sound more commanding. And then you need energy. You don't want the monotone voice just talking like this. You want to have energy and stress words and come alive, otherwise you're putting your audience to sleep. That's the verb, the vocal. Now let's talk about the verbal, the words that you're using. So we have the organization. How do you start? How do you end? What about the grammar? And Miss Persnickety comes in there, and we'll talk about her in a minute. And what about your vocabulary? So many people try to have these big words when they present. And they start presenting, and they don't know what, the audience doesn't know what you're talking about. And so I know a lot of coaches who have said, yes, my client wanted a bigger vocabulary to speak to these companies. And so you start using these huge words, and nobody knows what your message is. And we call that hypercranioloquy. Hypercranioloquy is exactly that. You're speaking above somebody's brain. What's the point of it? Does it make you look smarter, or does it make you look less in touch with your audience? So don't worry if you don't have a huge vocabulary. If you have a good message and you speak to your audience, that's all that matters. Okay, so now I want to ask you, how many of you have pitched? If it's not a formal pitch competition, you may be just pitching to somebody at a meeting, or you're a meeting like this. How do you begin a pitch? What are your thoughts? Anybody have any ideas? What's the first thing you should do?
Try to recognize the audience, so if it's more than one person, I'll say like, hello everyone, or it's, creates, like if we met with before, I'll be like, it's nice meeting some of you. For those who don't know me, my name is.
Okay, sure, that's one way to start. Any other ideas? Graham?
Get their attention.
Get how?
Some sort of statement that might be a little bit jarring even.
Right, okay, great, a jarring statement. And Tina, what were you going to say something, or was that the same thing?
Same thing.
I thought you were, okay, I thought you had that. Yes.
You started with a question, and that's something also that gets the audience's attention.
Exactly.
They need to be engaged with you.
That engaged is the most important thing. I don't want to talk at you. And in this day and age, we're done with that. We're done with presentations. They really should be conversations. When you're speaking to an audience, let everybody feel part of it, or they disappear. They tune out. So you can begin it, well, let's just look right here. You can begin it with, just like Graham said, an attention-getting opening. That could be, imagine there you are sitting, whatever it might be, because you wake up people's brains to imagine the scene you're talking about. Or what if, gives you the possibilities. What if I told you if you worked for 6 months on your communication skills, you're going to have the confidence that's going to help you in your career? It doesn't take 6 months. I shouldn't have said 6 months. But those are things that you can start your talk with. A statistic, a quote, a story, and I did leave out here a question. Just ask a question, because then you engage. I can't tell you how many pitches begin with, hi, my name is Linda Katz-Wilner, and I'm going to talk about my company, Successfully Speaking. We know that's what you're going to do, and you probably don't care what my name is. That's not so important. You want to get their attention so they want to hear about the product or your business or whatever it might be. Here's another pet peeve I have, and there's nothing wrong with what you said, right? There's nothing wrong. But many people say, my name is, and they say their name. That sounds so formal. It sounds like a template to me. What if I said, hi, I'm Linda Katz-Wilner? That sounds more conversational. Now, I've coached more people on pitches about that, and they don't always do it, but the ones that do it just sound so much more engaging when they do it in a conversational way. So that brings us to Miss Persnickety. Miss Persnickety, for those of you who didn't hear me a few weeks ago, she's my alter ego, because I don't claim to be that picky, although some people may differ, their feelings may differ about that. I can't help but hear mispronunciations, misuses of words, and poor grammar that many people, and I'm not just talking of people who are not educated, people with PhDs, journalists, all of that, have done. And I can't help but hear it. So I decided to put it all together in a book of at least 60 different misspeaks or misuses of words. So I know from last time, this group has some very good grammarians, and they know their grammar. But does anybody know what an example of a reflexive pronoun is? Does anybody know that? I bet Tina knows it, because she won last time, or maybe not. What is a reflexive pronoun? Anybody know? Nobody knows.
is like myself.
Yes, that's right. That's myself. Well, you're
Good.
But most people don't know. Now the question is, when do you use myself? Because most people use it incorrectly. So let's look at this sentence here. Which one do you think is correct? Give it to John or myself? Give it to John or me? Give it to myself or John? How many people think number one? Okay. How many people think number two? And how many people think number three? Oh my goodness, we have one of it. Somebody voted for each one. So basically, who's giving it? I'm going to, if I say to you, Graham, give it to John or
Me.
yeah, you give it to me. Because it's you give it to me. You wouldn't give it to myself. Now, if I said, I did it myself, it's because I'm the subject. And then I use myself. So when you're the subject, it's myself. If you're at work and saying, and here, the problem here is give it to myself or John, first of all, we don't want to use myself, but we always use the other person first. It should be me. So I find so many people mix up the he and the her and the him and the he and the I and the me, and then not knowing what to do. That's always been a challenge. So Miss Persnickety, in that book, we address all those things, because that also is a dent in our armor if that happens. People start to judge us. So now I just want to talk about something that's coming up. I mentioned Henry Mortimer earlier, and Henry Mortimer and I have worked together, as I said, with pitch coaching. And so what we're going to do, we're bringing, the quality in this thing looks very different on the screen. We're going to bring our company Catapult, and again, this is a new company where Henry and I come together and we help people with their pitches. Henry is the storyteller. He helps people create stories and the messaging for their pitches. And I'm the person who helps work on the delivery of your pitches. How do you sound? How do you look? What are you saying? And he has that background too, so we come together and we coach together. And what we're going to do is have a workshop here on Wednesday, March 22nd. It's 10:30 to 12, 10:30 to 12. And if you're interested, what we're doing is we're going to help the storytelling and help the delivery and have you practice your pitches. We can help you with that. But we're only doing 5 companies, and maybe more than 5 people if 2 people from a company come. But we want to keep it small so we can work with you on that. If any of you have any interest in this, just talk to Rick about that. You're ready. So, talk to Rick. Okay, and again, we're going to talk about that, crafting a compelling story, aligning it with your goals. People tell stories, but it has nothing to do with their business. And we're not up here to tell jokes. The story has to be relevant. And we want to deliver it with impact. In summary, I just want you to remember or be aware of the challenge of how we come across professionally. That we have to think about how we look, how we sound, and what we say, and we're judging the other people we speak to the exact same ways. So this should give you some idea of my company, what I do, and how I help people. And just so you know, we're doing this workshop, Henry and, not myself, Henry and me, we're doing this workshop. And I also run master classes in public speaking if people are interested in doing this. I do that virtually. I'll leave it for any question. Anybody have any questions to ask about this?
I have a question, a tip maybe that you might have. So I enjoy public, well, first of all, let me just say I could listen to you speak all day. You clearly are very good at it.
Yes.
I enjoy public speaking. However, if there's a microphone involved, it goes totally sideways. I panic. I hate the
Feedback.
Yeah. Any tips for talking with a microphone?
Don't listen to it. Okay. The biggest tip is, what's the most important thing in the room with the presentation? What is the most important part of the presentation?
Engagement.
Engagement. And who are you engaging with?
The audience.
The audience. The audience is the most important thing. Stop thinking about yourself. Because when we get nervous, we're thinking, what do I look like? What do I sound like? What are they thinking of me? And it's not about you,
Right.
even though it is for them. But don't worry about that. Am I reaching the audience? Am I asking them questions? Am I picking up that they seem puzzled and let me say something differently? That's what you're supposed to think about. I agree. If you start to hear that feedback, especially in a very large room, the interesting thing, without getting too technical, people who stutter, when they hear that feedback, they're fluent. So for them, that would help, because all of a sudden they hear that there's that little delay, which is really what's happening in their brain. That delayed feedback makes people fluent, interestingly enough. So if somebody stutters, that's a good thing. But normally it could be very distracting. And it's distracting if you listen to your own voice. It may not sound right. Don't think about yourself, think about everybody else in the room, if that helps.
Yeah, no,
It's easy to say, but it's
sure.
really what helps. Any other, Graham?
I have a question about the reflexive pronoun use of myself. When you say that you're doing something on behalf of yourself and an organization or a group of people, I've seen it grammatically that some people say you always do say myself. Like say, on behalf of myself and 1 million cups, I'd like to thank you for coming.
Oh, you mean saying yourself
Do you
first?
have to say myself? Or can you just say on behalf of 1 million cups, thank you for coming?
Oh, sure, you could say it that way.
Oh, okay, all right.
Right, you don't have to say, because you are part of 1 billion cups.
Well, right, yeah. I guess maybe there's some.
But you know what happened, Graham? If I said on behalf of me and 1 million cups, all of a sudden I said something incorrectly.
Right.
Because it is on behalf of myself. I'm not even sure if that's the right way, if you should use myself there.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure that the subject
And
is.
you
it's
stumped Mr. Snicket.
Oh my goodness. Because I think the subject is me.
I have
But
a
it doesn't
recording
sound
of that,
right
Graham.
on behalf of. I think on behalf of me, but I would say on behalf of Million Cups and me.
Okay.
But myself isn't right there, because that's not the subject. That's a tricky one. You really did stump me, and Larry will never let me
I'm
forget.
so happy.
I was stumped.
That's why English is so hard for everybody who's not fluent. That's
That's
so
right.
hard to learn as a second language because there's all these
Oh,
little
yeah.
things that don't.
I mean, most of the people I work with are non-native speakers, and when you see how difficult English is, I mean, I listened to a pitch yesterday, and somebody was talking about hauling trash, but she said howling. Well, that makes sense. Hauling could be howling, because most of my foreign clients will say author. When they see AU, it's ow. A native speaker wouldn't do that, but that's so challenging. That's just the beginning of it. It's amazing that the challenges, and for the IT professionals who might say develop instead of develop if they're from India.
Oh, yeah.
It's a challenge. And yes, Tina.
I have a two-part question. The first is when you're practicing trying your pitch, that is the time to, am I correct, be self-aware to try to make sure that you're automating in a way what you're trying to convey. So it's not about you because it's more automated. Am I correct that you should be self-aware when you're trying to practice and get your pitch in
Sure,
together?
but I'm glad you said that, but don't memorize your pitch. Do not memorize your pitch. The audience can tell. And do not read your pitch. In this day and age now, with all the Zoom meetings, with the virtual meetings, people are reading scripts. I heard it yesterday when I was listening to pitches. You could tell. If you're going to read a script, don't put it down here so you keep looking down. Put it up on your screen so nobody knows it, but you better use pauses and intonation to make it sound more natural. Because when you memorize, all of a sudden you're on autopilot, and I'm just talking, and I'm probably looking at the back of the room, and I'm remembering what I'm saying. And I'll mention something. Years ago, and I just read an article today which made me think about it, an article on Facebook, and it was about Dr. Joyce Brothers, that she actually had somebody who wrote her columns. She never wrote the columns in Good Housekeeping. I went to an event years ago, and she was the keynote speaker there. Huge room of people. And she gave this talk. She gave the keynote talk after lunch. And the whole time, she's looking at the back of the room. And you know she's given this talk hundreds of times and made lots of money with this talk, but there was no engagement with the audience. So she might have been better with interviews, but if I'm presenting like this, and because it's my script, and I've said it so many times before, you have no connection with me. So please don't memorize. Be very familiar. Say it lots of times so you're familiar. That's good. But if it's memorized and scripted, the audience can tell. And then if you forget one thing, I saw somebody freeze in the middle of a pitch competition. And I told him don't memorize it. And he stood there. And he stood there for so long. Nobody knew what to do. You know, should we applaud you? What's happening? And I kept trying to channel and say, look over your shoulder. It's on the screen. But he froze. And it's because he memorized. So it's a comfort for us to memorize, but it's not going to work.
And then the second part of the question is the perception part. My perception of you is not only based on who you are and how you present yourself, but also my prejudices, where I come from and what is normal for me. So do you have any recommendation, because you need to speak to your audience in that regard?
Yes, we all have biases. If anybody in this room says they don't have a bias, they're lying to themselves, because we all have a bias. And so they've done studies in the UK because there's a lot of bias about accents there, the upper class and the lower class accent. And one of the things they're trying to teach HR professionals to do is, if before you interview somebody, you focus on the fact that I may have these biases, I'm aware that I have these biases, they tend to do better when they interview somebody. So if you have an audience that's clearly not, you can't really relate to, possibly, and you have that tendency, or you might be judging them, remind yourself that that's what you're doing, and it pulls you out of it a little bit. We have biases, but if we are aware of what they are, I'm trying to think of an example. If I have biases about people who, I think everybody should be working out all the time and that's so important, and then I show up and I can see a lot of these people don't work out, I just have to accept that, boy, that's my mind. That's how I'm coloring the issue. There's nothing wrong with that. Does that help, Tina?
So bring in a little bit of empathy and compassion into
Be aware. And be aware and just know if there's a bias, and maybe I'm not right. I may not be right, but it's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. But I can't impose that on everybody else. Take people for who they are. Easier said than done, but keep reminding yourself that you don't know their story. You don't know the real story. So if somebody seems extremely overweight, or if you make a mistake and say to somebody, oh, what do you do? You can't make assumptions about people. And I once did that after knowing I should never do it. But I worked someplace every week, and the woman was getting bigger and bigger, so I think, well, this is safe. Now I know I can say it. And I said something. She goes, oh, no, I have kidney problems. I go to dialysis. I'm thinking, oh, my goodness. Don't ever assume anything. Ask questions and assume the best for people. And again, that's easier said than done, but you don't know their story. You don't know what's happening.
I actually had a question. I love your advice on grabbing the audience's attention with a question or a bold statement or a statistic. However, what is your suggestion on approaching that when you're going to a networking and you have 30 seconds to a minute or 2 minutes to talk about what you do in your company? Because, asking a question and engaging the audience like that takes up a whole minute right there to have them all answer.
Right, but it could be a quick statement. It could be something quick. Like during COVID, we all had these meetings, and everybody was, my name is, and this is what I do. And I was trying to play around with it and work with some of my clients on how to do it. And what if I said, does anybody here want to speak, sound, and look like a leader? I'm Linda Katz-Woolner, Successfully Speaking, and I help people with their public speaking skills. See, it switches it up, and maybe you're the one person in the room who does it differently, so it makes you memorable. So if you could think of a need that people have related to the service you're providing, you're going to grab their attention more than, my name is, everybody goes through and you hear the same thing every time. So think about what you can do as a quick tagline to introduce yourself, and it makes you stand out. Again, think what the audience needs, not what you need to tell them. Anything else? Rick?
Just one point. I've gone through your master class. So what I love is that you prepare everybody in advance with material. And you also bring people from different, international, different parts of the country that allow you to get feedback from others. So if anyone really wants to dig in, it's what's your average?
I do a one class. My first class is more about the nervousness and how to harness the anxiety of public speaking, and then how to organize your message and then practice it. And then some people like to take the follow-up class where you get with 3 other people from around the world who are all working to improve their skills. So one person may be working on their pitch, another person may be working on how do I lead a meeting, and you get feedback from other people. Each one is a 2-hour class.
Great experience.
Thank you, Rick. Larry?
I just want to piggyback on your comment, your concerns about a microphone and what happens. Wait till you turn a microphone on and a video camera on.
Oh, boy.
People absolutely decompensate in front of the camera. I've heard the best speakers, I do a lot of filming and pitching, and including Linda, and watch, people just can't put it together. They just fall apart completely.
It's so true, and I actually learned this here when it was being filmed for Facebook, that I really had a much different experience than I normally do. Just that red light right there.
It's true. And you know, when I used to work with people in my office for all these years, and I'm not giving them an audience, this is before I did master classes, I'd say, okay, now I'd like you to say this, I'm going to turn the camera on. They completely changed. Just that camera, we were one-on-one, that camera, because the camera doesn't lie. The camera shows you all your faults. And one tip I'll give you also is when you watch yourself on video, if you record a pitch and you watch it, turn the sound off and watch it. Because then you get to see the visual and you see, does it look powerful? Do I look friendly? Do I look confident? All of those different things, because you're taking all the sound away and you're just watching the body language. Then watch it again with the sound, and you can do that. There's an app I'm going to tell you about that I'm actually an advisor for this app. It was created by somebody in California who used to work, I think, at Google. I can't remember which tech company. It's a public speaking app called Yoodli, Yoodli. It's free right now, yoodli.ai. It's free. You can practice a pitch. It records you. It's artificial intelligence is the words we're hearing every day now. It analyzes your rate of speech. It analyzes if it's on Zoom, your eye contact with the camera, how you're situated on the camera. It analyzes, which I don't love, but how many ums you say. It analyzes what weak words you say. So if you say just and so and perhaps, it's going to hit you for that. I think that's good. It's a good tool. However, first of all, I don't like to count ums. I like to teach people to pause. And they tell you, rehearse your speech so it's memorized. I mean, I wasn't a consultant on the content. I don't think that's the answer. Pause more. It also, I actually spoke with a client from Nigeria who wanted to do some work with me. And the app was in the Zoom call, so it was analyzing him. I couldn't understand him. And I worked with this. I couldn't understand him, so clearly I wasn't going to work with him if I couldn't understand him. And then I looked at the Yoodli app. And the Yoodli app said that I was using words like just and so because I talk softer. It depends what your content is. Sometimes you want to say right and so. Do you know what I mean? That's appropriate for your audience. Yoodli isn't that smart. The AI isn't that smart. He came out as the better speaker than I was, which amazed me. And I told the developer of this, I said, there's something missing here. It's not capturing everything, but it will capture very good information for you where you can practice it. Look at the pitch. And if you're an ummer, there's a game you can even play where say, okay, let's practice talking for a minute if you can talk without saying So it's a great tool, and it was adopted by Toastmasters International, so they're using it. But I encourage you, but it's only as good as the AI. It's not as good as having a personal coach because it's not knowing the audience or the person. But that's a nice tool to use.
I just have one more question
Sure.
about delivering speeches where it is more impromptu and improvised, where you might have someone does run-on sentences, or they have a sentence that then it doesn't quite complete, and then they start the next sentence halfway through it. And I've seen, like, Trump is a great example of someone who does this, where he just keeps talking.
They cut themselves off.
They cut themselves off in
Oh,
a
it
way.
drives me crazy.
What is that? Is that like a specific phenomenon? And like, how do you fix that? Because I do know some salespeople that do that, and it seems like it's a standard trait for some people where they just can't finish their own sentence. Like, kind of like what I'm doing right now.
In my personal opinion, I'm not going to diagnose it,
Yeah.
but it's probably somebody thinking faster. People who are, especially really smart people, are thinking so fast and they have so much information that they're just tripping over themselves, trying to get more information out. So I didn't finish that sentence, but I really need to tell you about this. And so the best thing to do for that is to remember there are periods after sentences. And so the period means you stop for a second. And you'll have more of an impact on your audience if you pause. People can wait to hear what the next word is. I'm not going to have the same impact if I just keep talking like this and I don't give you any time to understand what I'm talking about. I'm just throwing all these words at you. And so you'll see that when you start to see good speakers. Some of them pause more. It helps make a point. And some of them don't. So they have the energy, but you can't always follow what they're saying. And some of them want to be very authentic and speak the way that they speak. And don't tell me how my grammar should be. Don't tell me how my pronunciation should be. Let me talk the way I speak because I want to be authentic. So there are almost two camps.
Right.
And I say it's great to be authentic, but know your audience. If you're speaking to a CEO or you're trying to get money, maybe you should be a little less authentic as far as how you're speaking and try really hard to use best practices. Again, it all comes down to know your audience.
Thank you.
All right, well, if anybody has any other questions, we'll be around here.
One other question.
Sure.
We are grateful for all the information you've given us as entrepreneurs to help us, but we're all about community and understanding how can we as a community help you in what you're doing. So that's our last question.
Oh, that's a great question, because I know that was said in the beginning, and I was thinking of how to weave that in, and I forgot because I got carried away with my information. Well, for me, I want to meet people who need help with their public speaking skills. I do master classes. I go to companies and do training. If you know of people who are non-native speakers, because they have that additional hurdle of communication, which we talked about, if there's an accent, I work with people. I do an 8-week course with people to help them with their executive presence. If somebody has an accent, I usually do a 15-hour course to work with them over a period of 4 months. And so basically, if you know what I do, and you know somebody who's nervous about speaking, or their company has to speak someplace, or they have a presentation, or somebody new who's moving up in their organization and just doesn't have the gravitas, the executive presence that they want to have, those are the people I help. So if you know those people, I also always offer 15-minute consultations by Zoom at no charge. So if there's anybody who has questions about it, I mean, they can't call me every week, but if they want to, if they have concerns, I can talk about the different services that I offer. And I have my Miss Persnickety book. You can certainly tell people about that because I sell Miss Persnickety and I sell other products if they have foreign accents. Great question. Thanks for asking me, Tina.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, my pleasure. All right.
So we have about 15 minutes left to do any kind of community updates. If anybody wants to come up and give us an update on what they're working on now. Anybody have a community update? I can kick it off unless Joyce, you.
Yeah. Is the flyer up anywhere? Or what flyer?
Which flyer?
Well, so we have our second professional office hours coming up March 1st, right? March 1st, this one?
Next Wednesday?
Yeah, next Wednesday. Okay. It's going to be right here. We had a great turnout last time. It'll be, again, myself, Rick Leinbach, John Weedman, and John Allen. So you can kind of run the gamut if you have a great idea or want to feel like you need some help getting it off the ground. Feel free to stop on by. You're going to have some great resources here to help you do that. So
Time?
it'll be 4 to 6 next Wednesday.
That's not on there. I
I'll
don't
print
think.
some papers out. Sorry.
No, it's not okay.
Okay, sorry.
8 to 6 p.m.
That was all I had.
Does that include everyone that was here last time?
Yeah, with the exception of
Riley.
Riley.
Riley, yes.
Right. Oh, okay.
We'll have John Wheatman.
Yeah, we'll have Riley back in April. Talk about reels and stuff like that.
Yeah, I ended up talking to her for a while about social media strategy. She was great.
So who is the best audience for that program that you're talking about next Wednesday?
Well, so myself, we're a fractional, I represent Dirigible Systems. We're a fractional CTO. We help you with your technology strategy. If you have an app idea, you just need some help understanding the technical side of it. John Weedman is does business law. Of course, Rick Leinbach is a fractional CFO or virtual CFO. I don't know which you prefer. Yeah.
Call me what you like.
Yeah, so to help with financing and that aspect of it. And then John Allen represents, his company is Advantage Internet Marketing. So really, if you're an entrepreneur and you just want to get some advice, maybe engage with particular person, stop on by.
I don't know what a fractional anything is, so I need some insight
Instead,
on what that
instead of
means.
hiring a CFO,
Okay,
Rick's my CFO.
Okay.
I touch base with him on a periodic basis, and he helps me with the knowledge that I need for my business without actually having to hire someone on a full-time
got it,
basis.
okay, that's.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. And so that's in the evening from 4 to 6.
4 to 6, March 1st.
Thanks, Julius.
Talk more.
I can.
Yeah, we'll have more information.
Magic has a hackathon coming up this weekend. Saturday all day at Carroll Community College. Gabby, do we need any volunteers still for that? Is there any openings?
Well, I think we're good for volunteers, actually.
Okay.
For staff.
But if you want to come out and sort of see what hackathon's all about, you're more than welcome to come out and watch the pitches. It'll be, let's see, what do we know what time the pitches are? Is it 2?
They start at 7.
Start at 7 p.m. So 7 p.m. Carroll Community College this Saturday. If you want to come see what our students have to pitch in terms of their business and app ideas, you're more than welcome. It'll be at K100, right?
I've heard good things about the judges.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the judging I hear this year is going to be
top-notch judging this
Yeah.
year. Oh, okay, all right.
Are
Anybody
the
in this
pitches
room?
going to be recorded? And we'll be able to check them out?
Yes, we will record them and we'll share them on our YouTube channel.
Wonderful.
And then Magic is also launching our next game development class. So for people who want to learn about Unity and C# for game, like professional game development for making video games, we have an online course. It starts March 21st, and it does fill up pretty quickly. I think there's only 8 to 12 spots available in this course, and we have a professional game developer who teaches that. So it's been a very successful class so far. One of our students actually has gone on to develop games for Roblox. It's now earning like $250,000 a year at age 17. So, yeah, no, really.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty impactful class. And I think that's it for Magic updates. If anyone has any
I
questions.
have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is there an age for that? Like, my 11-year-old might be interested.
Yeah, I think it says 12 years and older. Now, we have
Oh, there
made
you go.
exceptions in
Okay.
the past.
12 now.
If they are a very mature 11-year-old and they have good math skills, then they can join.
Okay.
But we kind of deal with that on a case-by-case basis. We have allowed 11-year-olds before, and then they had to drop out because they just couldn't follow along, unfortunately. So, yeah. Anyone else have a community update to share? Who wants to come up here before we? Yeah, come on up. Is there a website I can pull up for you?
Rootcausology.com, ROOTCAUSEOLOGY. Lots of letters.
S causality.
Causology. Like
Oh, ology.
biology, but root cause.
.com.
ology. Yes.
Did I do that right? Nope.
You did. Root. There's an E.
Oh, sorry.
But, yeah. There it is. So if you tap on resources, there's a retreat thing, and that's what I wanted to share. If anyone is interested in optimizing their brain health and reducing dementia risk, having a Brain Health 101 retreat May 21st. It is going to be at Bon Secours. There are other retreats coming as well. Registration is open for all 3. But this one is only a 1 day and it's local, so I wanted to highlight that one. If anybody's ever been to Bon Secours, some nods.
Yeah.
Beautiful space. I'm a yoga teacher, an occupational therapist. We have some connections, lots of connections with speech and language therapists as well. And I have another occupational therapist friend who has lots of extensive background in mindset. So he's going to be kind of focusing on the mindset piece. I'm going to be teaching like all the things top to bottom to help our brain. There's lots of things that we can do to prevent dementia. I don't know if you all saw the news lately that they just found a 19-year-old with Alzheimer's. So 19. Yes. So the earlier we start optimizing brain health, the better. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great statement to use when you start a talk.
Yeah, really. That is a great introduction.
Yeah.
Right.
That grabs attention.
Any other community updates before we? Billy?
No, I came late, so I'm not focused yet.
All right. All right. Well, if not, then Tina, we'll wrap this up. Take us out.
Absolutely. Oh, we are so grateful for our entrepreneurial community, for our speaker who helped us figure out how to be better speakers. I'll throw that away and say that we are 1 Million Cups Westminster. We're an entrepreneurial community of people helping people. We want to thank Startup Portal for the location, Magic for bringing it to Westminster, Coffee by American Ice Cafe, sweet treats from Jeannie Bird, great people here. If you want to plug into our entrepreneurial community, go to onemillioncups.com/Westminster and click apply to present. Sometimes we have one presenter, sometimes we have two, and next time it could be you. Have a great week, everyone.